If you're like most people that are interested in improving their health and the way their body looks, then you've probably gone on a fat loss diet at one point or another. And whatever method you used, whether that was tracking your calories or meal prepping and following a specific nutrition plan, you probably had success in the short term. However, even though most people are pretty good at losing weight and body fat quickly, studies suggest that only about 10 to 20% of those people are able to keep that weight off long term. And unfortunately, most people end up putting on all the weight they lost, and sometimes even more. So in this video, we're going to be looking at what you want to do after your diet is over to make sure that you stay lean and maintain your body composition. And in addition, I'll also share some of the most common mistakes people make after a diet to hopefully prevent you from making the same errors. So the first question you should be asking yourself is, should you be maintaining this level of body fat, and is it even realistic? So for instance, if you're a physique competitor that has just finished a show, or if you're an athlete that competes at a specific weight class and just have to drop a lot of body weight, then it's probably unrealistic and also super unhealthy if you try to maintain that level of leanness. And instead, you should focus on quickly increasing your weight and your body fat to a more normal level so that you can recover from the diet, regain your body's normal function, and train hard again. But for most people that haven't gone to those extreme levels and just want to look better with their clothes off, I'd say a body fat percentage of about 10 to 20% for men and roughly 18 to 28% for females is a realistic target. Everyone's going to be a little bit different depending on their genetics, and some men might be able to walk around at 8% body fat all year round, whereas someone else might feel low energy and mood swings if they get below 15%. So you'll just have to find a place where you're comfortable with. And so once you've finished your diet and you're happy with the way you look, you want to increase your calories back to maintenance immediately. So you want to be eating the same amount of calories that you're burning. And the reason for that is when you're in a calorie deficit for a longer period of time, your body will experience what is called metabolic adaptation. So it will automatically reduce the amount of calories it's burning to try and prevent you from losing further weight. Our body has just evolved to do so over time to prevent us from starving to death quickly at times where food isn't available. These adaptations occur by downregulating different physiological functions and result in us having higher hunger and cravings, as well as reduced sex drive, and just overall lower energy to train and live our daily life. And it also makes it super hard for us to gain additional muscle mass. And the only way to reverse these metabolic adaptations is to get out of a calorie deficit. Now, depending on how lean you are and for how long you've been dieting for, you might feel these effects are more or less pronounced. But if you're finished with a diet, then by definition, you don't want to be in a calorie deficit anymore. So no matter how much your metabolism has adapted, you want to get out of a calorie deficit. So you should have some idea of how big of a calorie deficit you're in at the moment. So no matter if you're tracking calories or not, you should at least be weighing yourself multiple times a week and then tracking your weekly average. And then depending on how much weight you're losing, you will probably want to increase your calories by 200 to 500. So let's say, for example, you are eating 2,000 calories at the moment and you're losing about half a kilo per week. That would mean that you're roughly in a 500 calorie deficit. And so once your diet is over, you would just raise your calories to 2,500. And the first week, you are probably going to gain some weight. And there's no reason to freak out over it, because if you've made a sensible increase with calories, then you'll probably be right around your maintenance calories. And then by definition, you're going to be maintaining your muscle and fat mass. And so the reason you're going to be gaining weight is because A, you're going to be eating more food, and that food obviously weighs something and will sit in your stomach. And B, you'll also hold on to some water and some glycogen. So unless you've increased your calories by a crazy amount, there's no reason to freak out over it, and you can basically ignore the first week's average. And then continue tracking your body weight and slowly raise your calories depending on what the scale shows. Because you're not in a calorie deficit anymore, and the hormonal changes that I talked about earlier will be reversed, you'll feel more energetic and you'll be moving around more and fidgeting more. That will also burn some additional calories. So over time, you will have to increase your calories even more. If you are planning on just maintaining your current body composition, then I would increase my calories reactively. So in other words, once your scale weight starts to go down, you would just increase your calories by another 100 to 300 calories. If on the other hand, you want to gain some additional muscle mass, then I would suggest that you increase your calories proactively. So you would increase your calories by 100 to 300 every week until you're gaining more than 1/4 to 0.5% of body weight per week on average. And the reason you want to do that is because, like I talked about in my video on lean bulking, you want to be in a calorie surplus if you want to gain muscle. If you don't track your calories, you can also use hunger and satiety ratings at each meal. So basically, you would just eat slightly bigger portion sizes until you feel a little bit more full than you did on a diet, and then stop eating. and obviously you still want to be weighing yourself at least 3 times a week. So now that we've talked about how to adjust your calories, we also need to talk about the food choices you want to make after you've finished your diet. In general, I'm a big believer in keeping the base of your nutrition the same all year round. So whether you're trying to lose weight, gain weight, or just maintain your body composition, I think your diet should mostly consist of lean proteins, fruits and vegetables, healthy fats, and starchy carbohydrates. But obviously, if you're not in a calorie deficit anymore and you're at maintenance, you will be able to eat a couple of hundred calories more, so you can be a little bit more flexible. However, immediately after a diet, I do think it's a good idea to continue eating the same way you were the weeks prior and simply increase the portion sizes. That will make sure that you're satisfied because you're eating bigger portion sizes, but it will also reduce the risk of binge eating, which is pretty high after a diet when you're craving all kinds of foods. Like, most people crave some kind of food at the end of their fat loss diet, whether that is sweets or some kind of fast food. And because these are all very tasty but also very calorie dense foods, it's just super easy to overeat on them and go into a huge calorie surplus. And this is obviously not what you want to do, because at the end of a fat loss diet, you're very susceptible to fat gain and you don't want to undo all your hard work. Also, from a psychological perspective, it's probably not great either, because after you've overeaten, you'll probably feel super bad about yourself, and then that might result in further binge eating. So if you're someone who can just have a few slices of pizza, or maybe even a whole pizza, and then go back to the normal nutrition, then sure, go ahead and do it. But in my experience, both for myself and also working with a lot of clients, it's probably best to wait at least 2 to 3 weeks before you introduce more calorie-dense foods. And by then, some of those adaptations that have occurred during your diet will have been reversed, and also your hunger hormones will be back to a more normal level. So you'll not be experiencing the same amount of cravings anymore, and you'll be able to enjoy your meal without wanting to eat everything in sight. Plus, by then your maintenance calories will be a little bit higher, so that will make it even easier to fit those more tasty snacks into your daily calories. And if you've enjoyed this video so far, then be sure to give this a thumbs up and comment down below what you find to be the most difficult thing about weight loss. Okay, so now that we've talked about what you want to do after a diet, let's talk about some of the most common mistakes people make with this. And the first one is to assume that their old maintenance is also their new maintenance. So they'll say, well, I used to maintain my weight at 3,000 calories, so I guess I'll just increase my calories back to that number. But you've got to realize that maintenance is a dynamic number, and because you weigh less, your body will have to use less energy to move you around. And like I said before, you'll also be experiencing some kind of metabolic adaptation. There are studies with people that have lost over 10% of their body weight that show that even after a year, their energy expenditure is still lower than it was previously. So don't assume you'll be burning the same amount of calories at your new weight than you were at your previous weight. Mistake number 2 is actually the exact opposite of that. And that is that people will only increase their calories by a very small amount, and sometimes not even at all after they finish their diet. And they'll do that because they're scared of rebounding and putting all the weight they lost back on. And I do understand the concern, but remember, your maintenance is like the name implies, you'll be maintaining your body fat and your muscle mass. And if you don't go to maintenance and you stay in a deficit, then you won't be able to recover from your diet, and those cravings and those hunger signals will only get worse over time. So that could result in you binge eating and actually doing the exact opposite of what you want to do. So even though it can be psychologically challenging to increase your calories, it is necessary, because otherwise you won't be able to recover from your diet. If you're someone who really struggles with this, then maybe instead of increasing calories by 500 straight away, you could just increase it by 200 the first week, maybe by 400 the next week, and then all the way up to that 500 mark in the third week. And that should relieve some of that stress. The third, and probably the biggest mistake, is to not have any healthy habits in place. So pretty much anyone can force themselves to adhere to a calorie deficit for a short amount of time. But if you don't have any healthy habits in place, then as soon as your diet is over, you'll just revert back to your old ways, and you'll be back to square one again within a couple of weeks. So make sure that you have a high level of physical activity, that you're frequently monitoring your body weight, and that you're eating mindfully, as these have all been shown to be very effective strategies at maintaining weight loss long term. I actually made my last video about this topic, so just click on the screen here if you want to learn more about what kind of habits are helpful at losing body fat and maintaining that long term. So that brings me to the end of this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you let me know in the comments if you have any other questions regarding this topic. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.